Thank you, Jay. Nick, do you mind me to ask a question, or are you
Please go on.
okay? Uh, Prior to go maybe into a second sort of large theme, which is around the disruption economy, which is around the instability, the VUCA world that we are all in. I'd like to sort of summarize, because I think this first part of this interview was already very rich, and maybe offering to summarize the viewpoints of two experts or two people who live in worlds that need to be creative and innovative, and just summarize what you call the mythology of creativity, but also ask Nick, as most of you know who are listening to us, Nick, other than being a consultant and a university professor in management, is also and most of an excellent conductor. So classical music has no secrets for him. So I'd like to be curious to maybe let you start first, Jay, and then have you react, Nick, ask you to be in the skin of the interviewee for a while and see, does that make sense in your world as well of classical music? Would you support what Jay sees as myth? And for me, it's more of a summary of everything you said so far. So if I were to ask you, Jay, so what are the myths of creativity? What would you say? Maybe the three critical myths that, the caveats that we have to be very careful at. What should people leave this interview with in their minds, in your view?
Yeah, today, all leaders, all executives want their people to be creative. They want them to be innovative. Okay? There's no executive who says, oh, we don't want people to be entrepreneurial. So the question then is, how do you kind of make people more creative or more innovative, right? And when we ask the question, okay, what type of activities or what are you helping people with in terms of them becoming more creative or innovative? The usual answers are very predictable. Oh, we did a 2-day seminar on design thinking. We kind of did a bunch of activities on dropping an egg from a 2-story building, or going away to Thompson Island and going from one tree to the other. These activities. And but the challenge is when you go back to the office on Monday morning, Wednesday, all these activities, you are no more creative. You are no more entrepreneurial. You're going back to the same kind of work environment. So, but this begs the question: how do we really become creative? We are all born creative. We all have creativity inside of us, right? But they, businesses, executives, leaders want their employees to be creative from a business perspective, right? From applying their creativity to their industry, their competitive challenges. And that's where we need to really understand how some of the greatest entrepreneurs and innovators became creative, or we attribute creatively, right? One of the most popular companies in the United States is Southwest Airlines, which is generally regarded as the granddaddy or grandmommy of low-cost airlines. If you take Ryanair, EasyJet, or any of the low-cost airlines in Europe, they will all say, hey, we were trying to copy Southwest Airlines. Okay? If you go back and dig at his history, Southwest Airlines magically they did not come up with, voila, we're going to create something so out of the box. In their own history, they were copycats. They went and stole all the ideas from Pacific Southwest Airlines. And this is where, Nick, your comment goes, Pacific Southwest Airlines died, but Southwest Airlines survived. But Southwest Airlines had copied all their operations from Pacific Southwest Airlines. Right? So it's that survivor bias, isn't it? And so, again, if you look at, say, Henry Ford, he didn't wake up one morning and stop ran saying, Eureka, I found my assembly line. No, he was at a slaughterhouse looking at all the animals going on a conveyor, line, and said, oh my God, I can do this for my cars. Okay. So when we ask leaders and executives and say, who are creative people? Who do you think are most creative? The most common answer we get globally are artists. Artists like Nick, they say, hey, painters, sculptors, musicians, they are the ones who they say are creative. And then you go dig deeper into how they became creative. Right? That's where you find out the truth is that, Shakespeare did not magically come up with these stories that are so fantastical. Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet was not an original. Hamlet was not an original. Macbeth was not an original. The Merchant of Venice was not an original. Othello was not original. They were all copied. Yes, beautiful, flowery language and embellished it with beautiful context. Walt Disney copied like crazy. He went to Tivoli Gardens in Denmark when he wanted to really create Disney World in California, and he kind of laid out the whole picture and then copied it. Right? So the famous surrealist painter Frida Kahlo, the Mexican painter, right? The parents knew that she was very creative. She had great talent when she was very young, but she never had any formal training in painting. So at the age of 13, they bring in a teacher for Frida Kahlo. And the teacher looks at the work of Frida and says, oh my God, this is great. You have amazing talent. You're very creative. But then he says, stop being original. Copy the masters and you will become even more creative. So copying is the starting point for creativity. The more you copy, the more creative you get. The faster you copy, you will find your originality. You will find your uniqueness. You will find your own signature, but the starting point is copying. But the word copying is a taboo when it comes to business. You have to have a unique customer value proposition. You have to be amazingly unique. From the day one, I have to magically be unique. Okay? That's garbage. You can't just sit at an executive table and say, we will find our uniqueness tomorrow. Okay? So there is a journey to find your uniqueness. There's a journey to find your signature, the mark that you're going to leave on the world. Yes, there are companies who found it. IKEA, Lego, or Aldi or Trader Joe's. Yes, they found their signatures, they found their uniqueness, and they are milking that uniqueness. Right? If you were to take a bank, how unique are you with your products and services? You're not really unique. So there is power in that copying, but we are obsessed with being unique. So that's the disconnect that exists between how do we get to our uniqueness without that copying.
I'm perhaps going to surprise both of you and maybe our listeners by agreeing emphatically with Jay. This last point for me in terms of the world of art, and so I'm conductor, but also composer. The idea that you have to be unique and original, that myth is one of the most misunderstood and the most powerfully destructive in the world we work in. If you look at any of the great masterpieces all the way up until the present, Mozart's First Symphony sounds like Haydn, he's copying. Beethoven's First Symphony sounds like Mozart, he's copying. Brahms' First Symphony sounds like Beethoven. Even Schoenberg, the early works sound like Brahms. There used to be a sort of a journeyman artisan. You learn the craft, you learn the trade. You're going to be original, but first you have to master the craft. And I think for me as an artist, that's one of the biggest myths about creativity. Creativity is a muscle, and you work that muscle by copying, by imitating the greats, by trying to understand their mind, their thinking, their work. So that, completely agree. That's the first one. For me, I would add two more just as a provocation, but they're connected to what you said, Jay, myths in my domain about creativity. The second myth about creative artists is you have to suffer. You have to be alcoholic and divorced, and your life has to be tragic to produce things of value. And it's right and wrong at the same time. People who are passionate enough to spend their whole life trying to do something usually do suffer. You have to make trade-offs, sometimes personal, others. So you have to sacrifice things for your art. But where it is true, if you want to do something amazing, creativity, coming back to the muscle you need to work, you have to make a sacrifice. If you want to have a fantastic body, you have to go to the gym every day. If you want to be a creative artist, and my father is an author, he gave me the 3 rules of creativity very early. He said the first one is you have to write every day. Okay, every single day. It doesn't matter how long, but every single day you have to write. But the second thing is you have to accept deep in your soul that almost everything you write will be garbage, absolute garbage. And the third rule is cultivate your taste. So if occasionally you get lucky, you stumble onto something that is not garbage, you keep that and keep throwing away everything else. That's suffering. That's suffering, to be humble enough to say, I'm going to write every day and I'm going to throw away everything that is not at the highest possible standard. So that notion, you do have to suffer, but you have to suffer in the work, not, drinking and womanizing. That suffering is interesting, but doesn't help the quality of the art, really. And the third one I would add, which is also links, I think, back to business, is you have to be profound. You have to be deep. You have to, if you think about Marcel Proust writing À la recherche du temps perdu, 27 volumes, this incredible novel. He knew when he was starting it, he was writing a great French novel. Okay, that exists. People like Proust, I think, sat down to write something profound. But look at J.K. Rowling, look at Harry Potter. It's incredibly creative, incredibly successful. Is it profound? I don't know. She touches on some deep archetypes and themes and symbols, but I don't think she sat down and thought, I'm going to write something deeply profound. It's wrong-headed, I think. It's up to the audience, it's up to the consumer, to go back to business, to decide. You need, instead of being original, to try and do something good, and to learn what good looks like, you have to work hard at what you're doing. And maybe what you create will transform an industry, will completely transform the world, but you can't sit down with that intent. It's the wrong way around. The market will reward you and say, you transformed the world if you do. But it's more about trying to do something that works, and as you were saying, building, slaving away. So